All right, buddy. Here we go.
We are back. We are back. It is June the 9th. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. You're listening to episode 589.
Yes, it is.
589. You are still kicking it at Mom's house, eating some Frosted Mini Wheats, which I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little bit jealous. Frosted Mini Wheats used to be my jam, especially if you let them soak just a little bit longer than normal. It creates some of the most underrated cereal milk of all time.
Oh, for sure. But I was just eating them raw.
you were going raw dog on the Frosted Mini Wheats. So
yeah.
So what I'm hearing is it feels like you just tried to chew up 19 saltine crackers all at one time. And did you wash it down with any water? Or are you just trying to toughen yourself up a little bit, chewing on some cud or some hay and getting that Midwest feel back into your
Exactly, man. It's all about toughening up. I wash it down with some coffee. Yeah, it wasn't the best, I'm just trying to make things work here, man.
Listen,
I still haven't really been to the store. I'm just winging it, getting my brakes fixed, my dad's old truck, it's like just, moment by moment, like we were saying last week.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a little bit of like that. I think was it Rocky 1 or Rocky 2 where he like goes old school back at like that farmhouse, place and like starts beating up on, raw meat and doing, sit-ups from the ceiling and stuff. That sounds a little bit like what you could have going on here for the next little bit if you're going to get back to training for your racing.
Yeah, look, and I'm not complaining, man. I'm not complaining. I've missed one day since I've been here, despite everything going on. It's been pretty solid.
Dude.
Yeah.
Like your shirt said, man, do it
now.
And we are doing it now. Again, like we said, this is podcast 589. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If it's your first time listening, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Your time is very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We'll cover it all. We will do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll also do a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax. We have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life as humans, as we feel very human right now, as both of us have moved 8 plus hours away into a new location, so we feel very human at the moment. Also, as coaches and athletes, we'll use that to kind of drive the topic of the day. We also will use our own athletes to drive the discussion. We work with a very wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes looking at their first sprint and 5K, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, and everyone in between. The majority here in the United States, but we also work with quite a few across the pond. So a good old-fashioned cheers to our mates and matettes. Is that what you call them? Matettes? Like, they always says mate. Somebody let me know. Like,
I'm not going there, dude. That's
yeah. I mean, I know.
It seems like it could be
dangerous. I think I've already made a mistake. But we'll use them to in the feedback loop we have with our own athletes and training peaks, emails, text messages, phone calls, and the like to kind of get a pulse on the community. We'll also go into our own community, which is you can find that on Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Let a lot of awesome people in there want to help, lend a helping hand. Very seasoned athletes, been around the sport for a very long time and willing to pitch in and answer some of your questions. It's a great community. You'll get a lot of answers and feedback in there. So be a part of that group. Don't be a lurker. Participate and pitch in. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yes. And may I start with something?
You can do it. It's 50. This is 50% yours. I mean, mostly it's like all yours because you do all the work when it comes to the podcast. I just talk into a microphone, but
yeah.
No, the floor is yours, my friend.
I just wanted to bring something up because I think it kind of dovetails on last podcast, but we were talking about distraction, I think, a little bit, and how easy it is to get distracted. I went to the minor league baseball game last night with some friends, and it's a beautiful new $35 million stadium, blah, blah, blah. No, it's really nice, but you know what I mean? And it's got, the $9 brats, and, this is Beloit. It's like a $9 brat. I mean, it's like,
dude, $9 brought in Beloit's like $35 brought somewhere else.
I know. It's all relative, but anyway, the point is, boy, have you ever been to a baseball game lately? I don't know how they are in the big leagues, but minor league games, there's no downtime at all. You can't, you know how you used to go to a baseball game and talk about the play or the inning or whatever just happened, and every single pitch right afterwards, it's got some crazy sound effect going on or some like new music or like the, fake organ. I mean, it was just so annoying, man. Every inning's got the, the dizzy bat game and the whole, I just don't, what's going on, man? Why are we why are we so like in need of distraction?
All right. I don't think I think we're always looking for something extra, right? Like, that's like, I haven't been to a baseball game in a hot minute. I've looked up a few of like the midday times for some Royals games. Apparently they suck this year, so I'm not super keen to get going, but I think Hayden would get a kick out of it. I don't even think it's like, I think it becomes a distraction, just like, we find ourselves as athletes. Like we always think that adding something else is going to make it better, right? Like, you're talking about, like they have walkout songs and all this kind of extra, sound effects that going on. I'm like, baseball games used to be like in between at bats and innings used to be dead quiet, like dead quiet. And it's kind of like relaxing. And I think it's just part of, how we've become as a society now, is that we always feel like we have to add something extra, or we need something, in addition to what we have to make it better, or, to make it more appealing, because that's what people are doing, right? Because everyone else is also now like a huge critic, like, you need this, and I think we be better if you do this, and you want to scale, you got to add this, and that's how you get people engaged, get customer engagement. And it's like everyone also has an opinion because everyone has a social media profile, right? So they got Instagram, you got Facebook, you got Twitter. Everyone is a professional on whatever topic they want to be on, and they can just, blurb out 3 or 4 sentences or copy and paste an article, and then now we're all an expert. So everyone has an opinion, and everybody's willing to give it. But it's about being busy, right? And so I think this is something we talked about yesterday in our Zoom call. When I kind of I didn't go old school, but people were talking about, things they purchased and, what's helpful. And it really all kind of got started like with somebody asked about swim skins. And this is like, not talking about like distraction and music at baseball games, but to me, it comes down to looking for something else when all we really need is what we already have, right? And that we think we can purchase extra things. Like, so the question in yesterday's Zoom call was, how beneficial is a swim skin? Should I get one? And I said, now listen, wetsuits, very, very beneficial. We've talked about before at length. They're super beneficial, especially for athletes. Listen, the slower the swimmer you are, the better a wetsuit is for you, the faster you will be. Because if you're a slower swimmer, you probably have, very poor body positioning, and that's what wetsuits do. They help keep you afloat. Yes, the not the fabric, but the neoprene they use, the surface area of it is very slick. It's slicker than your skin, so you're going to go through the water faster. But the slower you are, the faster you will be in a wetsuit. For guys that might swim, and girls might swim in like the low 30s or under 30 for a 70.3, it barely helps because you're already fast. Swim skins, on the other hand, I said swim skins are like water repellent Spanx. And because all they do is constrict your body so much that you become more hydrodynamic in the water, strictly because, like, when I was kind of joking, it's like when I put on a swim skin, I'm like, man, my figure really, my dad bod goes away because it like sucks you right in, and you got kind of a 6-pack, your chest is kind of looking all swole. You're like, man, I kind of look pretty good. That's what a swim skin does. All it does is constrict your body, like, and that's what makes you faster, because it doesn't help your body positioning. They can tell you all they want to. You can spend $350 on a swim skin the day before a race, which everybody does. I'd love to know how many swim skins were sold at Chattanooga 70.3 on Friday.
Oh, I know. Oh man, I wonder if that's the motive.
Like 80. I know. It's like, and then it's like, oh, it's wetsuit legal, but everybody drops 350 on it. And I'm like, why? Like, it might save you, and I'm talking might. I'm being generous here. A minute, maybe a minute. So what's the point? And if you get the right size, they are very, very, very tight. Like because that's what makes you faster, because it reduces the surface area and drag that your own body has. Like, it's kind of the same thing. And I says yesterday in our Zoom, it's very similar to someone that's cycling and they're really, really worried about their carbon wheels and a carbon frame. How much does your bike weigh? How aero are you? And I'm saving grams here, and I've got my ceramic speed chain, and I'm using some wax, and all while I'm like, dude, just drop 5 more pounds from less cheeseburgers, and you'll be better off. But we always look for something extra, and I can go like on and on about how much money people are spending on things that they think will get them free speed without doing their due diligence and not investing in like the right things they should be investing in when it comes to the sport that's already an expensive enough sport with $350 70.3 entries. That's like cheap all the way up to like $700, $800, $900 entry fees for a full. And you got people dropping, $350, $400 on a swim skin, $700 on a wetsuit. You got $350 for an aero helmet that probably doesn't even fit you the right way to make you more aero. And they'll drop, they got $2,000 on a power meter they don't know how to use. They're dropping $10,000 on a bike that they're not fit on very properly. It's just they're buying $300 pairs of carbon shoes. They're gonna walk, 80% of the race on. And you're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, seriously, what are we doing with, not this isn't a money podcast. We're not going to talk about, being a fiscally responsible triathlete, but it is about recognizing that 90 to 95% of everything we do in this sport comes down to this most simplistic, minimalistic thing, which is being consistent and putting in the right effort. Everything else you can add in running power, bike power. Now they got swim goggles that, apparently tell you your pace or can tell you your workouts. I'm like, when did we become fucking robots? Like, when do we need all this stuff? And it's not about needing, it's about wanting. And I think that's just a huge differentiator there's a huge difference in, and I talked this way to Hayden. He's like, but I need that. I'm like, dude, you don't need that Lego. Okay. But that's the thing. He feels like in his soul, he's like, but I need that Lego. I think this last thing was like a boat that like put out fires. He's like, but I need that. I'm like, dude, you don't need it. You might want it, and that might feel like you need it, but you don't need it. You have all these other toys to play with. Play with them. Use and if you're not using them, then let's give them away. And it's like, no, but I like them. Well, then good, then play with them. And I think that's like this. It's so true, much man. Like toddlers and triathletes are very, very similar.
Yeah, I went through that a lot when I was moving, cleaning out stuff. I like that, but I don't ever use it. So speaking of swim skins and carbon shoes and stuff, you obviously didn't read that classic Dress for Success back in the day, right?
Have you seen me dress? No, I did that.
No, but I just sometimes wonder, like, when I put on that swim skin for the first time, I was like, yeah, I do feel faster, yeah, like it. I don't know, man. Sometimes that stuff works, but it's been weird up here because, like I said, I can't find any of the stuff I like. So I've been wearing the same shorts every day, and that seems to work. But I find an interesting dynamic around that is that it really does kind of like get you back in that mindset where it's just kind of grinding again, instead of looking good all the time. You're just like, yesterday I had my run in the slate and I was going 3:00. I got to get out there before I go to this game or whatever. And I walk out the door and it's pouring, and I did not hesitate. Went right in. It just did my run in the pouring rain, and I like it when it starts raining while I'm running, but it's harder to go into rain like that. And I just think that, and I was wearing a long sleeve shirt and it just did not feel good at all, but I was kind of trying to love it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes wearing a little bit beat up pair of shoes and just going through it because, it's all that it makes it seems like it anyway. It makes it easier when you finally get a better pair, you know what I mean? You kind of upgrade and then you're like, damn, yeah, that does make a little bit of a difference. But it's I guess the mindset and the toughness to go through it, even if you're not looking your best and, you're not wearing your best tank or whatever.
It's called dependency. And I think that's like, and listen, and I'll be the first to tell you, I own a bike, a TT bike, It was custom built. I've got race wheels. I've got a power meter. I've got a watt bike in the house. I've got, a smart trainer that only uses a regular trainer. I'll hop on Zwift sometimes. I've got some race shoes, some Endorphin Pro. They got carbon plates. Like I've got it all. I've got a wetsuit. I own a swim skin. I've got it all. But I think what so much of us have come to do is become so dependent on our equipment, right? Or in the illusion that equipment equals success or equals faster times. And this, anytime we talk about this, we always get like like some negative feedback. You guys are such old schoolers. These things are the greatest. You're like, and really what I'm hearing is you're one of those people that have solely dependent that if you don't have your watch when you go swim, you're not swimming, because how will it be recorded?
It's miserable.
How will you know, right? How will it show up in Training Peaks? How will it show up in today's plan or Final Surge, wherever it is? How will it show up on Strava? That's what I hear. I'm like, whatever happened to just going out and enjoying a ride for a ride? Like again, like going back to our Zoom call yesterday, I was talking to the athletes that are asking about, doing an Ironman. I said, I think people race Ironman way too often. I think way, way, way too much. People should race Ironman a lot less, and they'd be a lot happier as an athlete and a lot faster. And I said, there's a lot of things you can do when not training for an Ironman or having a huge race, which is kind of, just like leave your house and go ride your bike and not be obsessed with your power and your heart rate and the data when you come back. You can just get back and think, man, that was really fun. I had a good time. Or you can leave your house and not know when you're going to come back. That's also very fun. Like we've become so obsessed and addicted to depending on equipment to give our sessions and our workouts extra meaning or validation or data. And you always hear like, oh, I'm kind of a data junkie. Okay, well then if you're a data junkie, what I hear when people say I'm all about data, then what I'm hearing is exactly how to interpret the data. If you don't, then you're not obsessed with data. You're obsessed with the visual of numbers. That's it. You're obsessed with numbers. Being obsessed with data means you know how to analyze it, to extract the information you need from it, and then apply it to the next session. If you can't do that, then stop saying you're obsessed with data. You're a data guy. I'm a geek like that. And okay, you're not. Just say that you like having numbers attached to your training session. No, you say that you have to have gadgets with you, which is fine if that's what gets you out the door. But guess what? When those are removed and if you find yourself going to the pool and your watch isn't on you and you don't swim, you have a problem. If your power meter isn't working on your bike and you choose not to ride, you have a problem. If you can't find your heart rate monitor when you go out for a run, so you decide not to run because you won't have the data, you have a problem. And there are so many athletes that have those problems because they have to have something. They have to have that output, right? They have to have the data output, the numbers output of their swim, their bike, their run. They have to have it. They have to see it because it provides some kind of validation in what they're doing to give meaning, maybe, or give something. You don't need those things. Like, it wasn't that long ago that people just kind of used their notebooks and spreadsheets. Some of the best ultra runners and triathletes in the world still go off Excel spreadsheets. They don't go off Training Peaks or today's plan or Final Surge or what the other software is. They don't use Zwift. They don't use Trainer Road. They just ride their bike hard, or they run easy, or they do their swim workout. Like, do you see Katie Ledecky with a heart rate monitor on? No. Do you see her wearing a watch when she practices? No. Like, do you see her wearing form goggles? No. But that's that. Like, buying gear and tech is triathletes' like number one thing, and that's what keeps them like engaged. If that's what keeps you engaged in the sport, then I would heavily suggest detaching yourself here and there from that. Listen, and this is coming from a guy who used to be like that. This is like 2011, I think. And obviously that was like a really bad year for me. So of course I was obsessed with numbers, but I remember I was getting so obsessed with my power when I went out on rides. I just got a core power meter, and I was getting so obsessed with it that I gave my bike computer to a friend and said, don't give it back to me for 2 weeks. I'm just going to use I'm going to go MIKE TARROLLY here. I'm going to use my chrono. And all I'm going to know, I'm not even going to know how many miles I went, right? Which is, I was riding the tray, so it's kind of cheating because you do know how many miles you go, because you start a mile marker 440, and then you can just, you got mile markers. So I didn't know how many miles I was going. I didn't know the time, so it's kind of cheating, I guess. But there was a time, and this is gonna age me greatly. There was a time when I trained where, and there's a lot of athletes who've been in the sport for a long time, where I would go do a run from my house, training for like my very first year or two of triathlon. I would go do a run from my house, time using my old school Ironman Timex chrono.
Mm-hmm.
I would come back. I would get in my car. I would reset my speedometer, odometer, whatever it is, and I would drive to the stop sign I stopped to, and then drive back to see how many miles I went.
Oh,
That's what I would do. Like
yeah.
but guess what? The run still counted. Like it still counted, but we've just become. And again, I don't think I think the things that we buy into, quote unquote, or buy or add, they're not meant to be distractions. They just become distractions when they become the core and not just an addition, right? Or an amenity or just something extra to help you. It's the 10%, man. It's these extra things we have or we buy. They're the extras, right? They only, just like carbon plated running shoes. And I said this yesterday, if you don't plan on running a 3:30 or faster Ironman split, or a 2 hour or faster half marathon split in a 70.3, you have no business wearing or buying carbon plated running shoes, because they're not going to benefit you, because you're not going to be running the whole time, or we're going to be running so slower than they're meant to be running. That's not going to help you. And so but we just buy things, we see it, we buy it, we think it's going to add extra, but it really just becomes a distraction. And then a lot of times, like carbon plated shoes or race wheels or aero helmets or wetsuits, is when we don't want to do a workout, we kind of go back to, well, I'll have swimming, especially. Well, I'm gonna down current, gonna have my wetsuit and race day, it'll be fine. That was Chattanooga last year.
Yeah.
And everybody thought it was gonna be 1.2 and a down river stream and a wetsuit, and everybody was 10 minutes slower.
Yeah. I hear you, man. It's speaking of, I have an old iPad. What are they? iPod Nano. I'm just like I try.
No,
anyway,
we're so dude.
I know but it's been my favorite thing because it's so small, and I just have my same old collection of songs on it, and I wore it running the other day, and I only, like I said, can find one pair of shorts, so I threw everything in the washer, including my Nano, and it's ruined. I'm like, shit. I was just starting to get into that. I was like, okay, this really feels good. I'm gonna go do some running and do my workouts with this music, and it was feeling good and everything, and then I did, and that's when yesterday I went out into the rain without it, and I found a new place, and I think it's weird because people will say, obviously you pay attention to data, I pay attention to data, and I think kind of in a weird way I'm really a data guy, but it's just sort of by RPE, like I was doing my chrono laps, and I would, I was running up this hill. It takes about it took me yesterday anywhere from a minute to a minute 20 to get up it. And I kept toying with all right, let's try to go 103, and it's sort of the same thing that I try to do in the pool sometime. And I'm sure you do this too, right? Where you're just like, just on effort, let's cut a couple seconds off here and see what that feels like and understand what that feels like. And I really get a kick out of that, man. I think there's something deep about being able to do that when you can really feel I'm not wearing heart rate. I'm just going by breath. And sometimes too, when I'm looking at my pace, man, I feel like that affects my heart rate because I'm like tensing up, or, you know what I mean? Like it has some kind of physiological effect, or, that's what scares me about power sometimes is like, sometimes I feel like really kind of letting it rip a little bit, and I know I got it in me or whatever. And if I start, being so married to these numbers that, you just don't know, where they come from, but you know what I mean? Is sometimes I know you give ranges and things like that, and that's a whole different game. But for me, understanding your ranges by feel is pretty key. I'm not so sure how much, I'm sure you do that a lot more than you talk about with me, but I find that really rewarding.
It's one of the most, and listen, like this isn't a podcast that's going to poo-poo on all the gadgets and stuff you just bought, but when we say this all the time, like the best thing you can do for your training is just to commit to being consistent. If you've got to that point where, to me, buying gear like power meters and wheels and a new aero helmet or a smart trainer or all these things, like is very similar to when you should add intensity into your, riding or running. Have the cake, right? Have your cake, which is your base level of aerobic fitness, before you can kind of put on some icing and sprinkles, which is, quote unquote speed work or threshold work or intensity work, or in biking and running, especially. The same thing goes for, consistency is the cake of training. And when you're ready to put on the icing, or you feel like you've gotten to a point to where because let's just be honest, like most triathletes don't train in a fashion and in a consistent enough manner to where the quote unquote data they get to be consumed and then later analyzed to go back and referenced and changing up, they're too inconsistent to make it something you can make, a reasonable assumption of how the next week or two would go. They just like having the numbers. They just like compiling a mountain of data. And it didn't always used to be like that. People would just go run and say, hey, this felt really good. And so like when you and I both start working with athletes, I always tell people, I'm like, listen, when you work out and I see, because I think people think about it in reverse. Like they see the numbers and the data as the end all be all. You don't need to know anything else. But the data only tells a very, very, very small portion of the story. And the kind of the example I give to athletes when I start working with them is this. I say, because they ask me how much and how often should I comment, do whatever, and say, well, I can pull up your 30-minute run. Like I did a 30-minute run today. And so if I pull that up, I'm gonna do it right now. So I went out today and I thought I was gonna run for 40 minutes because I was like, yeah, I felt pretty good yesterday. It's actually kind of cool right here right now. So, I think I'll just head out and I'll do another 40. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a different route. I'm gonna take because everybody thinks Kansas is like pancake flat. It's not. Okay, not like out like in where I live in Orville Park. It's like rolling. It has some decent hills. So if I pull up right now, I look at my 30. I end up running 30 minutes because as soon as I walked out the door, okay, I knew that I just felt off. I didn't feel terrible. I didn't feel great. I just felt awe, right? You know how that feeling is. Like you're like, I just don't feel awesome. So I immediately made the decision that I was like, all right, instead of going 40, let's just see how 30 might feel. And if I feel better at 30, I'll make a lap around the school and do an extra 10. But let's just aim on getting in 30. So at the very end of the run, if you want to look at it, like I am right now, I ran for 30 minutes in it with a distance of 3.38 miles and an average pace of 8:52. And if I look down at my average heart rate was 142, which is like mid to low zone 1 for me, with a max heart rate of 153. I had a decent elevation, which is 154. So if I look at that and I'm as a coach looking at an athlete, I'm going to look at that and think, dude, you felt like you looked really, really efficient today. Your heart rate's super low. Your pace was in the eights. You took, it looks like you took a rolling route. That's like one of the things I don't people understand and realize that, if you use like a Garmin or Sunto or any kind of like those GPS, like you can see the route and the elevation profile people use. And so I could see, what route I took, and it was a hillier route than I've been taking. So, but my average heart rate was 142. It's the lowest it's been in a while. My first thought is, man, you felt great today, but I felt terrible today. And so like, that's just and so as an athlete, if you don't comment and you say, and I've been like, dude, you were cruising today. Why'd you cut it short? Well, I felt off. Okay, well, let's think through this then. If you felt off and you didn't feel very well and your heart rate was really low, then something else isn't right. So it wasn't a great workout. Something is not going on that's right in your body. Maybe you need more sleep. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe your legs are too tired for what you wanted to do today. That's why you couldn't get your cadence high enough to raise your heart rate. Maybe that's what's going on. You can't, and that's the kind of information a coach needs. So when I say, to athletes, when you have a run or ride or some whatever, it's like reading a book with no pictures if you don't make comments. The pictures are what put it all together, right? Everybody loves, books with pictures, especially if you're a parent, because if you look, first thing you do when you get a book is you're like, how long is this? You're like, oh my God. Then you're like, there's no pictures? Great. I have to read every single word. The best books you can get as a parent is like 3 sentences on the left page and then a whole picture on the right. And you're like, I'm going to breeze through this in like 2 seconds. Hayden, settle down. This gave me 5. But when it comes to painting a picture and seeing things and getting like a really, really like deep understanding for how the session went, you have to have comments. You have to have, I guess not comments equals context. And if you have context as a coach, you can make good decisions. And that's the same for athletes that are self-coached. You want to have context to go back and look, because if you don't have comments about your session, you don't have context. You just have the data, and the data in and of itself isn't the end all be all. You need to know what's going on. You need to know how the athlete felt, because you might assume as a coach, like I would have had today, looking at my own session, dude, you're like close to peaking. Like, this is really, really good stuff. But if you're telling me the polar opposite, then what's right? Well, what's right is what you feel. And I think there's a huge disconnect, like you're saying, about going off RPE. And it's funny you said that, because I was actually thinking this through this morning as I was kind of reviewing Training Peaks, as the data that I try to consume the most of when looking at athletes are words.
Yeah.
I look at the words, right? I look for keywords. I look for no words, right? Like, so if an athlete is a frequent responder, and they don't, and they always leave, like, 3 or 4 sentences in Training Peaks, and all of a sudden they don't leave any, I'm like, hello, well check, are you okay? Or
exactly.
or they're 2 words, right? And so there's data is not numbers. It's not just numbers. And maybe from a definition standpoint in Webster's, it's all about numbers, but to me, it's about information. And if you want all of the information, then you need context, and that's what athletes provide. So you have to sift through all the context to make it, fully communicative, and not just about numbers, to really get the whole picture and set the athlete up for the best route for success possible.
Mm-hmm. And I was talking to another athlete. They asked they found a really good open water swim, like a pit or something like that. And he's like, man, I can swim there all the time. I said, he's like, how much should you swim in open water, for example? And this does tie into the data, because I said, well, here's the thing, and it's the same when we talk about get outside and ride, and, you got to have that ability and that comfort level, and same with running outside and whatever. But I think people really do kind of misconstrue what we say sometimes, because I love the treadmill, I love the trainer, and I love the pool, but you have to be outside. So what I was talking about with this guy is, I said, if you swim, ideally, I think if you could swim open water every time, that would be great. But, and I told him about, when he used to take us out to the lake and everything 3 mornings a week, and we did structure in the open water. I mean, we really hammered it, and I think a lot of people just kind of get out in open water and just cruise, and we've talked about that. But the same goes, it really is the same. I think that getting on a trainer, there's probably nothing better, as far as intervals, and you can really work it hard, and it's just harder. And the same goes with treadmill work and things like that. So I think that there's just always it's always a balance. You're talking about data and people that are obsessed with numbers or whatever, and then people like me maybe that are on the other end of the scale a lot of times. But you got to kind of, just like everything, I feel like it gets better when there's sharing on both ends. Then you come to the middle and you sort of use it, but you're not obsessed with it, and you're not completely the other way too. And I just think that there's a valuable lesson in all of it. You know what I mean? And I think that people tend to get, in society now, it's either one side or the other, it feels like half the time. And I just don't think that that's the real, and I think it's harder to come to the middle. I think it's harder to kind of be like, yeah, I can use that, and then I can also be myself over here. You know what I mean?
I know, I totally agree with what you're saying on, especially with, people swing to both sides. The way to, and that's the thing, is like, people are especially triathletes, are oftentimes so overcalculated that they don't even know how to race, because they're thinking their way through the entire thing. They don't know what it's like to, I know this probably sounds like taboo, or maybe maybe even shocking, but I told an athlete earlier today at their in their Olympic distance race this weekend, I said, I don't want you to wear a watch, and I want you to try and be reckless. Which is, total, basically total opposite of what I usually, tell people to do. Well, I mean, it's an Olympics, so like, in sprints and Olympics, I kind of tell people swim solid, bike like there's no run, then find a way to run. Especially if you're trying to figure these out. But this athlete specifically always overthinks and tries to listen. Triathletes are the kings and queens of micromanaging their own race. That's all they do. They micromanage their own race and their own effort and output from the minute they step in the water. they're trying to like, check their Garmin as they swim, and they might have like a satellite, reception mess up. It's like, you're doing 320 pace. It's like, oh my God, my day's over with.
That's
like,
what I mean, man. That's
no, you're
mental.
not. Like, it's like, yeah, exactly. And so I said, I want you to go out. I want you to be reckless. And I want you to, and they said, well, I might end up walking. And I said, you're right. You might, but I bet you won't, because you're still going to be you're still going to probably micromanage your effort. Like there's so many, because what's happened is with athletes is we've become so, dependent on devices to tell us what the input and the output is, to tell us what our RPE is, to tell us how fast or how slow we're going. Everyone's been on a run and they've thought they're going faster than they really were. Look at their watch, they're going slower. Everyone's gone out on a run and thought they were going slower and ended up they're going faster. So we all know, right? We all know intrinsically that a lot of times our power meters, our watch, our GPS device lies to us. It's like the weather, right? We all know the weather. Weathermen and weatherwomen are full of shit. Our weather apps are 90% wrong. But what do we do every day?
Yep.
Check the weather.
Yeah.
We still do it. We still do it. We'll always do it because we're like, yeah, but it's kind of right. Sometimes it's kind of right, but we don't put 100% stock in it, right? And so that's very true for racing, and it's very similar to like another athlete on the Zoom yesterday was like, hey, what if the B race I'm doing, I kind of don't want to be a B race, and I kind of want to go and rip it. I'm like, okay. First off, athletes only have one kind of a race, and that's an A race. And they say they have a B, C, and a D and E until they do it, and then it's important as an A. And I was like, then let's just try to blow up on the bike. Let's just do it. Like,
yeah.
What? Like, in order to really figure yourself out and to feel how hard you can push, you have to do that. And you're in most people's watches and devices rein them in so much that they'll never find that real peak, that rivet they like to call, especially in swimming, where you're swimming hard but not too hard. They micromanage their output on race day because they're so concerned about what it says. Now, yes, just some athletes, just generally speaking, race recklessly all the time and are kind of irresponsible, 100%. And those you need to rein in. In my experience as a coach, they make up like 10% of the athletes that you might work with or that you might see in race day. The reckless ones are the ones that, they just go out. You need to tell them, slow down. This is the pace range. And you give them a pace range and even a watt range, and the race over, they're like, yeah, right. I know I went a little bit over today. And I'm like, dude, you were 40 watts over the goal. Of course you went over today. Like, you have those athletes, but a lot of athletes that got in the sport later when all these devices were readily available don't know how to race by feel. They don't know how to run by feel or swim by feel or ride by feel. They have to have a device. And I feel super fortunate to have gotten into the sport at such a 20 years ago when you didn't have a ton of these. They weren't super available, and I didn't have the money either to buy any of them. But it's like, because you had to learn your own. You had to be your own governor. Know when to throttle down, know when to put on the brakes. And so I think especially for short course races, sprints, Olympic 70.3s, again, race them more, race them off, and use them to experiment, and don't be so scared to fail or scared of what's going to happen and what's going to look like. If it's not your A race, then don't treat it like one, right? Don't hedge your bet. Figure out how far you can go. And, you can call it reckless or irresponsible or race whatever, but it's like, get out and just let it rip and let your body tell you what it's doing, not your body's telling you what it's doing, filtered through a device that's made from a manufacturer, overseas, that's then telling you how you feel. Wait a minute, I'm missing something here.
And I got to tell you, I just love that point because on the trainer the other day, I'm watching these, videos that just keep showing up, these Ironman videos, and it was either Sebastian Kienle or somebody else in this thing, and they were talking about how the difference between pain and being tired. And, it's like, that's what I always think about what you're saying about getting a little reckless on the bike and just trying to test it and prove it. I think that's the zone, right? That people really need to flirt with and understand, because there's been so many times when I've gone out and, I just race totally by feel always. And sometimes I get off that bike and it's like, by no means should I feel like I could run well. And I do run well. But other times, for whatever reason, I'm either tired or like maybe just weak. I just wasn't strong enough. I pushed it too hard. But I don't know if it would have really mattered, you know what I mean, as far as my run a lot of times. And I think there's a fine edge out there that you got to find, and that comes down to, you know, I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes people think, we talk about burnt biscuits, and we talked that one time about being able to understand how to just toast them a little bit and get them warmed up. And I just think it's so fascinating to think about that, what that is, you know, because I mean, sometimes I've just absolutely shredded the bike and ran really well. And then other times I've really held back on the bike and I just didn't run that well. And I think it's because I just wasn't in that good a shape or my run wasn't strong enough or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So I think and I know those are all variables that we need to understand, but I think sometimes getting out on the edge, and like you're talking about, you call it reckless, but I think it's just kind of getting out on the edge of your potential. And I think sometimes that can help, you know, it's like, you know, your legs, most of the time, at least in halves, I'm not in fulls, you know, there's certainly been blowups, but you know, I've had super hard bikes that I would probably, if they were, you know, if I had a power meter and if I looked at it later, I'd be like, holy shit, that was probably a little too hard, but I've had good runs off it. And you have to ask yourself, when is it pain and when are you just tired? You know, like, cause sometimes you can get through that pain. And I think that's just you know, an underrated part of doing the run. And we were talking about when we were watching Chat 70.3, those pros they just cooked the whole thing. I mean, it was on from get-go. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's not like, and that they were burning, you know, that whole thing was on fire, you know, the whole day. So I don't know. It's just a really interesting thing. I think I love when you say that. Sometimes you're like, go out and just crush that bike and just go get it and see what happens, because I think a lot of people be surprised, especially like Olympic, you know, distance.
And the thing is, you can't do it just once. And that's, I think that's you know, everybody wants to do like a one-off and think, oh, that's where I can get everything from. Like, you know, they do a race prep ride and they think, oh, that's my power number for today. You did it one time. Like, you want to take the average of 3 to 4 to 5, like, and you might not have that opportunity. That's also why you should race more, is like, figure out, all right, well, you know, go out, okay, you know, Mike, go out and do an Olympic distance, and I want you to ride at, you know, 90% and then see how well you run off it. Okay. Well, I did that. I biked at 90, like you said, and then, which is really, really high. And then I was still able to run okay. All right. Well, let's dial it back a little bit and see if and this is what, you know, this is where the, you know, the quote unquote data junkies should, you know, pay attention in terms of, you know, getting actual, you know, practical feedback that you can make decisions from. All right. Well, you know, let's do a different Olympic, you know, and let's, instead of going 90%, let's go 80, you know, 85, and then see if how much better you run. And what if you run the same? Well, might as well go 90% on the bike, right? You know, and take some time, because if you dial it back, you're gonna lose a little bit of time on the bike, but you might gain on the run, especially in longer course racing where you might give up 20 minutes or you might gain 20. You have to play with that, because it's also how athletes are built, right? Like, some people just don't have that extra gear in them. So some people might be better off riding a little bit harder and then, you know, still basically running the same, or maybe a minute slower. But if they gain 5 minutes on the bike, then they just gain 4 minutes, right? Or you might have an athlete who, you know, because I was having this conversation yesterday with about, and I've mentioned this before, is that in my experience, females can ride a little bit harder than men can and still run well off the bike, you know, and maybe you have guys that need to dial it back from, you know, 0.75 to 0.7, you know, intensity factor in Ironman, right? And they'll be able to run 15 minutes faster, you know, on the run. They might give up 5 on the bike, but they're gaining 10. And those are things you have to play with, but you can't play with that and figure those things out if you're always micromanaging your race. If you're in not just your race, your training, right? Like, a lot of times I'll just say, you know, run 30 to 40 minutes as you feel. Whoa. I can't do that. I need to know exactly the pace and exactly the heart rate and exactly the effort, or I can't make these decisions for myself. I need to be told, no, you don't. Listen to your body. Like, if you don't know what to do, it means you're not listening. It means you're not listening to your body, or you don't know how. You need to know those signs. I know we say that a ton, but the other stuff, again, like the pace, the heart rate, the metrics, the data, all these little, extra graphs you can see in Training Peaks or WKO Plus, like, you see the next level. That's not the end all be all. Okay, it's just extra, right? The meat of it is how you feel and the feedback listen, the most important feedback you can give as an athlete is how you felt. That's the context you need. But here's the kicker. You won't know how you really felt if you were staring at your watch every 5 steps on your run. All you're going to remember is, and think about that, guys. If all you're doing is looking at your bike computer and seeing what power it is, and you're going out for a 4-hour ride, you're probably looking at your bike computer more or slightly less than you are looking at the environment around you. If you're going out for a 30 to 40 minute run, ask yourself, how many times am I looking at my Garmin to either validate or invalidate the pace or the feeling that I have? That's too much. Look at it at the end, and then tell yourself, all right, this is right or this is wrong. It's not absolute. And I know that's probably, sacrilege for, the data people out there, but like, it's not. In my run today was a perfect example, because if I had just looked at the run and been like, man, I'm cruising super efficient today, for me, usually 148 is the top end of my zone 1. I averaged 142 today. Okay, something's not right. Either my body's like saying like, hey, you need your legs are like mush, you need to slow down, you can't go any faster, and take a little bit of a break or do something different, or my heart rate monitor was messed up or something was off today. But my data is screaming at me, boy, things sure were right today. So which one is right? Me. I'm right. Okay. My Garmin isn't right. My data isn't right. I'm right. I knew that I felt off, and I made the decision to not continue to run, and I cut it short. And it's just one of those things that we all need to work on, to listen and know the warning signs. And then, but then obviously when you're feeling really, really good, then you can go off numbers and you can get things from that. But it's all about, you have to collect all of it, is I guess what we're both trying to say. You can't just collect the data and the output and the input. You have to collect everything in context. Just like we say, consistency is king, so is context. Context is always king. Another example, you could see an athlete, do a 30-minute run, like me, like say, like I got a pancake flat route I could basically do on the greenway behind me, or I could pick one that's super hilly. Well, if all I'm looking at is, if I'm looking at the graphs, I'm just looking at, time and pace and heart rate, I'm like, all right, what's the deal? Maybe I also ran at 2 p.m. when it's 95 degrees outside versus running at 6:30 when it's 65 degrees. Which one's right? Which one's wrong? It's all about context. You got to provide that, and you got to take that time and just understand that listen, it's always about how we feel, right? And it always should be. And that's why micromanaging yourself in training and micromanaging yourself in racing, and why you and I are both, try to be so encouraging. People are like, hey, I just kind of felt good today. If the same goes, I just went, well, good for you, because we don't always have those days, right? Like some days you feel like absolute, poop, and you're like, I'm going to cut it short. Some days you're like, I want to go 30 minutes longer, and you're like, dude, go for it, because you might not feel that way tomorrow. It's like, so you just go with it and enjoy it. And I think it helps. It helps the overall process, helps people stay engaged a lot more than just, micromanaging and being so reliant and dependent on devices. Yes, they have a place. Yes, they're purposeful. Yes, they provide, great feedback and that you're able to apply things for and race and maybe race better and train better and get faster. Yes to all those things, but only if you also have context.
Mm-hmm. And race specific moments, right, in training and things like that are so important. I think, you talk about going by feeling. If you like, do you feel like you're getting strong? That's why I like to do these repeat routes, because you can kind of tell, man, like I feel like I'm getting stronger. I can feel it, going up that same hill. It's like that hill doesn't bother me anymore. I mean, that to me is the essence of understanding training, really, is knowing knowing that you're getting better and knowing that you feel stronger. And like what you said, I love, it's always about how you feel, because that's really what it boils down to. And if you can get that in your head and you can, get to a point where you're pushing up that hill, twice as fast as you were 2 or 3 months ago or whatever. That stuff matters. And I don't think that, and if you can understand that and control it, and one of the things we talk about a lot is like in the pool, it's very difficult to grasp pacing for people. They can't find those different zones in the water. And I think that's what we're always after, right? Is sort of like, when I was out running yesterday and towards the end, I started feeling better, and I think a lot of people do that, but my breathing settled down. I do think that if you work all day or you just get up in the morning sometimes and you just throw your body into a different situation, I think it's naturally going to drive heart rate up a little bit, because it feels, it's sort of a flight or fight thing, and it's deep inside of us. And I always feel that when I start, I could be in the greatest shape of the summer, and when I start a run, sometimes I'm like, Jesus, I feel terrible. You feel like you're completely out of shape or whatever, but then 5 miles later, your heart rate, you feel like you're not even breathing anymore, you're just cruising. So what is that? Pay attention to those things and understand how far you can go, and like you can, that all day pace or whatever, really understand what that means, in the moment, whatever that is right now. What's your all day pace? We talk about that a lot in racing. It's like settle into that pace and just let it happen. And if that all day pace starts in an Ironman and it's 11-minute pace, and everybody's like, well, I got to stick to 11. That's my all day pace. But if you just let it go, sometimes that might go to 10:30 without even thinking about it. It might just feel better. It might feel easier as you get warmed up and your body's like, hey, all right, I feel good. It's all about how you feel, man.
I love what you said about figuring out your all day pace. Like that is something that every athlete needs to learn. And because it takes such a deep understanding of your body to know what that really is. And to be able to run, and that's why it's so great for athletes to do like negative split runs, because they'll take the first part easy and then like, I need to build to a finish, but I can't build too quick. I got to build slowly, because if I build too quick, then I'm going to bonk, right? So it's about, I can probably do this pace for 2 hours. And then, all right, well, what pace can you do for an hour and a half? Maybe a little bit quicker. Is that too quick? Yeah, maybe. What about for an hour? What about 2:15? It fluctuates up and down. So there's this deep understanding you have to have of your body and what it's capable of, and then being objective to that. And I think we can close it on this, but just as a few examples, just going back to Training Peaks today of why and how context is so key. I had one, and again, this might not, sound, this might sound like, as like a one-off, but an athlete today who kind of typed out their swim, they were like, all right, this is not for real. This is a fraud. This is not for real. It was too quick. And they were like, and then they emailed me and they said, I got in some poison ivy, and I got like, I'm on a 7-day prednisone. I'm like, oh, so you're on roids. Okay, I got it. And he was like, swim felt super, super easy. And I'm like doing like zone 4 pace on zone 2 feel. And his bike workouts, he's like, I'm smashing them. I was like, so context is key. And like you see this all the time. Like when you have athletes have breakthroughs, they don't have the breakthrough in the number that's put out in Training Peaks. They have that used to be my 40-minute run route. Now I need to find a new one because I'm back in 36.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll comment, they'll say, this felt good today. ... That's like the athletes like, please look at my numbers. They'll always throw a little couple dots in there. Like, man, I was feeling it today. ... Then you look and you're like, yeah, you were feeling it today. That's how you know things are clicking. But and things are going well, right? When you have confirmation, and again, context is key when it comes to how your workout was going. But you need confirmation, right? Or you need, to show that there's something's not right. My comments today on my own run would not be a confirmation on what the data said, right? And so, but you can also have times where the athlete's like, man, I felt really, really good today. And then they look at the numbers and they think, yeah, you did feel good today. Okay, those match up. Okay, that's right. Okay, those both, we're cross-checking our work here. Those both concur. Or you can have another one that says basically, all right, well, I thought I felt really good today. And look at the numbers are low. Okay, so what's missing here? Or vice versa. I didn't feel good today, but my power was great. There's always these things to go back and forth, and I think that's the hardest part that you have to kind of pay attention to is understanding that how we feel is the most important, because that is also what goes out and robs so many people. And honestly, to be totally honest, I feel like it is it has a great, it's a huge negative impact on our sport, is the obsession of numbers and metrics and Strava and Kings of the Mountain and comparison and all these things, because it's taken away doing things for fun and being fit because it's healthy and makes me feel alive, or joining buddies on a group run because community and conversation is what makes me feel happy today. Now, guys, I can't. I've got this 40-minute run with strides towards the end, and so I'm gonna have to kind of like, let you guys go. Are you kidding me right now? Like, it's those things that continue, I think, to isolate us away from what we're supposed to do, which is learn about yourself and connect with other people. And what we're doing as a society, especially as triathletes, is we are isolating ourselves in our basements, right, with our smart trainers and our treadmills and our fans and our endless pools in our basement. And we are obsessing and we are becoming isolated, lonely robots. Okay, we are forgetting what it's like to just go out on a group ride, and who cares what your numbers like. Like, I had one of my goals for living here is to be a little more extroverted and to be like, go out and do more things with more people. Something I'm not very good at all.
How's that going?
And, what'd you say?
How's that going?
Dude, it's actually going well. Like, I had a conversation yesterday with one of the moms at Hayden's soccer camp for like 30 minutes.
Whoa.
She her son's going to come over to have a play day with Hayden. He's super pumped about it. But the guy that did my my home inspection, he rides bikes all the time. He actually listens to this podcast. And he may listen to this one, but he was saying, I was like, hey man, what are some good group rides to do around here? I'd love to join in, learn a few routes, meet new people. And then I told him, I was like, hey, if you want to ride, let me know. I'd be happy to ride with you. And he's like, I'm just kind of getting back. I'm kind of slow, but I'm getting back. And I was like, dude, I don't care. But I'd rather go ride with someone else than ride alone, a lot of the times, so it's about those are things that I think are actually preventing our sport from growing as much as it can, because we do everything solo, we do everything isolated, and we have to be so stringent and so specific. Like, I can't ride with you guys. I've got these really specific. Just keep the intent of the workout and what's gonna. And I think we get so trapped and so confined in what we feel like is going to be okay for us today, instead of what might be driving us into the ground for the future.
Yeah.
And that is something that is prevalent in our sport is burnout, right? We don't know how to mitigate or navigate rather, doing so much alone and isolated and with so much responsibility or rigidity. It's like, have fun, do your best, leave the rest, and then wake up the next day and do the same thing again. And that's just, it's if we want our sport to continue to grow and blossom and not just be about, the Ironman distance alone, it's got to be about integrating things into your life, like we always say, being happy and healthy, having fun, along the way. And a lot of times that just means putting the watch down, putting the power meter away, and just go out and having a good time. And guess what? It still counts, and you're still getting fed.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we started, man. We'd go out to the trace and just ride. We didn't, there was always workouts on the calendar, different breakdowns and stuff, but we just went out and got after it and, made up, race things on the way. We were just kind of chasing each other a lot and cruise and whatever, but, it obviously paid off.
Here's how it paid off, dude, is we're both still doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I tell that all the time. I'm like, man, you've been doing this since you got started, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I've been doing it for 20. And it's not because I'm like, some super athlete who's achieved a lot. It's because I love the sport, but I love it because I feel like I've pulled away when I've needed to pull away, and I've pushed forward when I feel like I could push forward. And that's why I'm still here. And that's why, my only shot to Kona will probably be when I hit the 70, 74 age, because I'm going to outlast all you people. But
I've got faith in you, man.
You can't be so many people get wrapped up in it and feel like a failure because they're not, they're not hitting what they want to hit, or they're not racing what they want to race in the right way, or getting the performance result they want to see. And so they just want to quit. They want to be done, and I get that, but there's a lot to it that I think, we need to continue to kind of unravel and kind of get back to our roots if we want to see the sport grow, is to, get back and have fun and be more objective and understanding and compassionate to ourselves and what fits in your life and what doesn't, and stop trying to fit a square, peg in a round hole.
All right, we can end it on that.
Yeah, we went overtime today, didn't we? That's like one of the things. Like, I'm not having you in the office. You can't look at me and be like, "Let's cut this one. Let's cut this one, dude. You're rambling today." But you know what? It was still good. It's always good conversation, and a conversation that we love, just like we love you, our listeners. And if you haven't been or need to go back, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for more support for the rest of the year, go to our website, or like I just said, go to our website, go to the coaches tab. Hit up the coaches tab and check out our roster coaches and reach out to the one you feel like fits you best. If you need anything from Mike directly, he's at crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's already been said, but if you need anything, go to the website. C26.
If you need anything, go to the website of the website, which is c26triathlon.com. You can always click on the down drop link, which is c26triathlon.com, and go to our website, which is c26triathlon.com.
Nice.
So one stop shop for all things coaching, camps, community. Or go to our website, c26.
Yeah. Next, speaking of that though, I've had the gear page on hold, but I have all the gear here, and I hope to get that back up. So there's some hats and water bottles and different things that are available now, and hopefully some new stuff soon. But next week, I'll probably announce it on the podcast once I get it back up and organized, because, But anyway.
Or on our website, triathlon.com.
Easy. All right, dude.
All right,
I'll catch you later.